Instead of asking what will AI do next, I believe we should be asking how are we going to use AI to create the future that we want. Join us for breakfast. On this episode, we're talking to Eric Stoddard, who made his name designing the now iconic Chrysler Crossfire, had a long career in automotive mostly, culminating in the Ford Mach-E, the first ground-up EV for Ford. And he has now decided to take it upon himself to help the automotive industry and the product design industry capitalize on AI and new tools such as AR, VR, and XR to literally transform how cars and products are designed. This should be a really good one. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming because I feel like we've crossed paths many times, or at least crossed in corridors, but maybe never worked directly together.
Yeah.
I spent my first few years in America, basically contracting for Ford, doing work for Ford. And at the time, you were senior designer, design manager there.
Design manager at Ford. Yeah.
And so, what was your duty at the time at Ford there?
So I worked in a number of programs over the years. I was there for about 10 years, and the most recent program was the Mustang program. So that included the 2024 Mustang Coupe and the Mustang Mach-E electric vehicle. Yeah, so both very, very interesting programs, and really, really happy to be a part of the history and the heritage of Mustang.
Yeah, the Mustang Mach-E in particular was very interesting. We contributed to the Mach-E. We contributed to the center stack work.
Right.
And what's really interesting about that program, it's first real ground-up EV for Ford. It started off as something else, and then it became a Mustang. It created controversy, but also it created a lot of attention, which was a very interesting cultural moment in the automotive world. And so, were you part of the design program for the exterior and the interior, or
the exterior primarily? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was with the program in a number of points in the program. So at the very beginning, when we started to envision an electric vehicle as a Mustang, and doing a lot of the early proportional work, and then the user testing, to see if something like that would be accepted as a Mustang.
Yeah.
And then later on, as the manager for the Mustang Coupe program, we sort of exchanged a lot of the form language and the visual elements, and then and so some of the visual elements were lifted directly from the work we were doing on the Coupe, and then finally at the very end, I worked with the engineering team on the final feasibility, the final surface releases and things like that. So yeah, it was a really, really great program.
And so, was that one of the last projects you did at Ford?
Yeah.
So looking at that last project and where you started, which was at Chrysler, how different was the process? So you mentioned the Crossfire was the first major program?
Chrysler Crossfire was my first car in production, and that was a really special program. That was one of the only times in my career where it literally went from one sketch to a fully running car in production.
Yeah.
It's almost like the designer's dream, that you do this hot sketch and everybody loves it, and then they build a car, right? And you get to see it on the road, and it actually happened. It was and it didn't just happen once for me. It happened a couple of times later on in my career, like at Hyundai. I worked on a couple of vehicles like Genesis Coupe, which ended up on the road, pretty much untouched. But it's becoming exceedingly rare, and especially as you go into a bigger company like Ford or General Motors, where there's a much bigger teams, a lot more siloing, a lot more market research and focus groups that sort of play into the design decision making, the mixing and matching. It's very rare now that a design ends up on the road as the result of one designer's vision, and especially at a bigger company. When you start dealing with the smaller startups, currently in my career now, I work as a consultant and as the founder of Car Design Academy and Launch Studio. I work with teams of people, but also on a very sort of small level with startups, helping to craft those visions and keeping the teams very small and working through to fully running vehicles.
Wow. And so when you started your career, so you started mostly as a a pen on paper sort of designer, sketch artist? Was that really the way in, the gateway in?
Yeah, drawing and sketching has always been the sort of fundamental skill set that defines a great car designer.
Yeah.
And as I went through school using traditional media, very quickly we were already beginning to transition into digital media, and that was something that was happening literally as I was graduating. We were, the design industry, the automotive industry was transitioning to digital media, and that was a really fundamental shift that sort of separated a lot of designers, the older guard from the younger people, and
Is that right? Even though, because you still had did you have like a Wacom, and you might be using, a different set of tool sets, but the principle was still very similar at the beginning, right? You were still sketching on a surface.
The principles were the same, but the medium is very different. And I'd say the biggest difference is the undo button.
Right.
The ability to lay down a stroke and say, okay, that's not the right stroke, undo,
Yeah.
And you don't do that. And with a pencil and a marker, you lay it down and that's it. You know, make it work. So
And so at the beginning of your career, when you started, you said that sketching was a key part of what companies looked for. There was a craft, sort of in addition to great ideas, great vision, being able to pitch them, you had to mix that with great competence with a skin.
Absolutely,
sketch pad, right?
yeah. And it's what we call visual communication. It's the ability to take an idea, take a vision, and communicate it visually. And the oldest method to mankind to communicating visually is drawing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now, from Crossfire to now Mach-E, how much of that is still carried across today? Or when you left Ford, how much of that was still true? How much of it you could still recognize in the process of a creative?
Yeah, it's still very much the same process, although the tools become increasingly digital, and but really began to transform the process for me and my team was the rise of the sort of rapid 3D modeling tools like Blender and Maya and now Gravity Sketch, which is the ability to basically sketch spatially with virtual reality and augmented reality, and so a designer could go from sketching on paper to building a model, but now they can sketch directly in 3D, right. And so that sort of translation step from 2D to 3D is now irrelevant. You're just going straight to 3D, and so and in doing so, we began to bypass a lot of the traditional workflows with clay models and working with digital sculptors, and the designers themselves were beginning to do more and more of their own sculpting and sending data directly to milling machines and only working with the clay modelers in sort of more of the finishing stages.
Right.
Yeah.
But you'd think so. You mentioned that there was some resistance from some designers, even early in your career when you were moving digital. Was that? I would have thought that would be, though, a moment of empowerment for designers.
Well, it was for me,
right? Because
it was for me.
I'm not a great sketch artist, but you put me in Photoshop, you put me in a 3D package, and I feel I can express more clearly, and I'm not limited by the fact that I can't sketch that well. Was it not empowering for people? They didn't find it as a...
Yeah, it was absolutely empowering for me. One of the greatest frustrations I always had was doing a great sketch and then handing it to a modeler or handing it to a CAD sculptor or a clay sculptor, and basically being at the mercy of whoever was doing the sculpting. Sometimes they were really good and sometimes they were not so good. And then the other thing that happens is once it became a clay model on the floor of the studio, it became basically public domain, and anyone who walks through the studio, whether they be an executive or a marketing person or an engineer, has an opinion. And especially with a product as iconic as Mustang, you get a lot of opinions in the room, and very quickly the project can take a different turn than what your original intention was. And so I always sought to master these 3D tools and digital tools in order to maintain a greater sense of control and mastery over the outcome, right? And,
Do you not find? I remember walking and hearing the executive conversations, and some of these executives have an understand. They can project. They can see a sketch and picture it, and there can be room for interpretation in a sketch, because they're attuned with like design sensibilities. But at the same time, other executives sometimes needed to see something more polished and almost visually a very high fidelity.
Yes.
To get to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
And so, did these new tools for the Mac E compared to the Crossfire make it easier to get alignment quicker amongst the executive team?
It made it easier for me to get alignment, because what they were seeing was much closer to my intention.
Right.
Yes. So instead of being able to rely on their own interpretation of a drawing, they were seeing my interpretation.
Right.
And only my interpretation. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting also the sketches though.
Yeah.
A lot of great sketch artists also, they bring a kind of, you can tell it's not real. The wheels, the proportions are exaggerated, but they're trying to project an emotion. They want you to look at the form in a way that they see it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Sculpting haunches and things.
The emotion of the design is every bit as important as how it looks, and it's how it feels is just as important as what it is.
Right.
Right. So so in addition to conveying the design intent, I'm also conveying the emotion of the design, the emotional response that I want to elicit in the viewer. Right. So
I get that.
Yeah.
And it's also like you're trying to control the conversations around the portions of the design that you see as important. And then over time it'll change, because you'll be limited by what the engineering of the car needs to be.
Yes.
But at the beginning you won't be able to focus on the design elements that make sense. I'm curious. So as the technology evolved, already when you're working on the Mac E, AI was beginning to take a part in the conversation, right? It was the tools were beginning, at least. Were they a part of it in any
not
of the
yet?
design?
No. Generative AI didn't really start in earnest until the 2021 maybe.
Okay.
And that's when the tools began to become mature enough to be usable. But I began to see the beginnings of generative AI as far back as 2015. There was a data analytics team at Ford that outside of the design studio that was working on a very primitive AI engine based on a data set of about 10,000 images from every make and model of vehicle going back 10 years.
Right.
And they paired these images with marketing data in order to determine, right, so let's say I want to make a design sportier, right? It could take this engine, I could take one of the images and give it some parameters like to make it sportier, and based on market research data associated with every single image in the model, it could concoct different proposals to evolve that design towards being more sporty, right? So so
like adding wings and stripes and things like that?
Yeah, or just changing lines and angles, and the output images were extremely low res, very primitive, very lumpy. I mean, they were not usable, not usable at all. But I knew that over time, as far back as 2015, I knew that over time this was going to emerge as a legitimate technology. That and sort of the fear within me was that. Once the marketing people got wind of it, they realized they could just input some marketing metrics and generate images that could rival those of trained designers, right? We could have a real big problem.
Right.
So yeah.
It's funny because so at the time I was doing experience design, I left in 2017.
Yeah.
And on the experience design side, AI had been around for a while, but mostly to do with research. So you could test footage and then have the AI analyze footage to look at behaviors. And, because sometimes you ask a consumer what they think, they rarely tell you what they actually think.
Right.
When you analyze the behaviors over hours of road trip, for example, and then you analyze the footage, you use an AI to, how many times did they look away from the road? And for example, and they would admit to something different when you ask them. So AI had been around for a while, but where I think it hadn't broken into was AI as a tool to create. It was it would identify problems. It would help in some extent with engineering. We're beginning to see forms that were engineered using AI, but the creative aspect, this notion of like using a computer to create something that was new, felt still foreign, I think, and felt like something that wasn't, about to happen in 2017. So I'm curious when that did happen, when you mentioned the bloaty images, but over time, so you said 2021, that's when it started to become...
That's where, in my mind, it became usable.
And so, what was your first reaction when... Did it feel... I mean, I remember I started as a graphic designer and videographer, and I remember seeing the first few bits of footage in graphic design, and honestly, my heart sort of sank at the beginning. I thought, wow, this is it. I could just... In the near future, I'll feed it my brief, and it'll create variations for me. Did you have that?
Yeah,
moment?
My first reaction was, wow, this is great. And then the second reaction was, oh no. So, yeah. And now what am I going to do?
Yeah. I think a lot of people across, music, we've spoken to people from the music industry, the design, obviously plenty of writers.
Yeah.
There's that, stomach feels to the ground. How did you get over that? Or did it take you a while to...
It was so what I think what we're all reacting to is this experience of seeing something that we've taken years, if not decades, to learn how to do, that takes us hours to do well, hours or days, and here comes this technology that can do it in seconds, and do rapid iterations of it faster than any human could do it, right? So and it's becoming increasingly competent at producing really good stuff. And a lot of designers are asking themselves, okay, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my future, right? And am I going to have a job? Am I going to have a place in this new way of doing things, right? Yeah. And so it sort of separates people. You're gonna have some people that say, okay, I'm gonna get ahead of this. I'm gonna learn this. I'm gonna master this, and I'm gonna use it in my everyday process. And then you have other people who are like, this is wrong. This is the wrong way to do it, and this is absolutely perverse, and I'm going to fight against it with every fiber of my being. Yeah. So
did you have some of that a little bit? I mean, I guess the first sketches that I start to see from automotive, Viscon and tools like that, I couldn't help but think, but this has been trained on sketches of all these great designers who put all their passion to this, and then it was fed into a machine that's now giving us a sort of a potpourri mix of all these talented people.
But it's not that different from when a designer goes into a studio and sees all the sketches on the wall from the other designers.
Or competitive sets.
Or competitive designs, or they're going on Google or Pinterest and looking at reference images, and they're looking at what's been done by other artists, and they're synthesizing in their mind what is the direction they want to go, and they're taking bits and pieces of ideas from everybody and formulating a vision for whatever the particular project is that they're doing, and it's really not all that different. It's just much faster and from a much bigger set of data. So I compare, the early stages of generative AI is really a research process, very very similar to Google or Pinterest or any of the other research tools that we learned how to use. Back when I was in university, I was looking at magazines, car styling magazine, auto and design magazine, and you're constantly seeking input and ideas and in order to feed the creative energy to push forward with something, right?
Yeah, and that,
we don't design in a vacuum.
No, but and it was interesting because I remember when. So when I started working with automotive, it was probably around 2012, something like that, 2011, and people were beginning to use Pinterest more. And then over time, it became part of the process. You would have these giant boards, and I remember there were some rumblings in the press in design that it was some trends were beginning to come across in multiple vehicles. You'd see certain headlamp motifs and certain things. Do you think that is it just a misrepresentation, or do you think that it has led to more vehicles looking more the same? And are we risking going down a path where AI exacerbates that even more, where people are being put under pressure to quickly generate, and they're generating from the same reference points, and so they get the same looking-ish vehicles?
Yeah, well, I think design trends have always been in existence, right? There's always been a general trend of design, and that designers tend to sort of gravitate to as a group, as a whole, right?
Yeah.
AI as a tool, it in the wrong hands will exacerbate that, right? It will, there are people who are getting ahead of AI and learning to master it and learning to really express a vision using AI as a tool. And then there's and that's a very few people. And then there's many other people who are they're allowing the AI to sort of lead them, right? And AI on its own will kind of go down the path, because it's trained on images that have been done before, is more likely to take you down the path of conformity and familiarity than something truly visionary. So
Yeah.
I've developed a framework we call design doing, that it's a process and a philosophy and a mindset of looking beyond what's today and using AI as a tool to help identify what's possible, what's the future.
So in a way, are you using AI to show you the obvious in some respects, but then, it'll show you perhaps the answers to a problem statement that anybody could develop, and then it's trying to point to you, you're using it to point out where are the white spaces opportunities, or how is it being used? Because when you looked at Pinterest, you could tell people were looking at trends either in other products or in automotive and trying to create something new. And by mixing these different components, is it the same idea, or is it in the sense of like, I'm going to generate a response to this brief, I'm going to get 30 or 40 pictures, and I know that my competitors, be it in the studio or in another brand, may come up with similar answers, and so I know sort of where not to go in some ways, or is it how is it?
Well, I'll take you through an example of a demo project that I started doing, which was in response to the rebranding of Jaguar, and so I saw the new Jaguar concept, the Type 00. I was very disappointed. I think it completely wrecks the brand. They're trying to take it into this new demographic that, frankly, I don't think is going to connect with Jaguar at all. But so I decided to use this as an opportunity to demonstrate how our design doing framework could maybe take Jaguar in a more appropriate future direction. But again, something just as visionary, just as futuristic, but not where they've gone. And so if I were to just type in Midjourney or ChatGPT, give me a Jaguar for 2050, it'll basically take today's Jaguar and smooth it out a little bit, but you'll see all the familiar elements. But if I tell you, take Jaguar out of the picture, take car out of the picture, and start understanding who is the buyer, what are their ambitions, their emotions, what are they wearing, and then go into like what are some of the products that they're using, get into maybe who are some famous artists and sculptors, so I'm building step by step what does it look like, what is it made of, right, without using the word car and without using the word Jaguar, right, but like so a very simple question is I asked ChatGPT, describe a single abstract shape that represents Jaguar. And of course, this is after I've gone through a whole bit of research on the history, past, present, and future of the Jaguar brand. And it gave me this description of an S-curving metallic sculpture. So it's this metallic, smooth sculpture that has this S curve to it. Yeah. And then I said, give me a Midjourney prompt. I sent it to Midjourney, and it gave me like all these different expressions of this beautiful S curving abstract sculpture. Now I have the aesthetic reference I need to go and design a car. So then I between some Viscom work where I'm starting to introduce some automotive elements like wheels. I'm just slowly, step by step, prompting the AI in different ways to see how I can use that abstract sculpture to drive the future aesthetic of a Jaguar car,
Right.
without ever referencing a current Jaguar or even a past Jaguar.
Yeah. Anybody can jump onto Sora and say, sketch me a Jaguar SUV, and massage it and get to something that's appealing, that feels in line with the lineage. Whether it goes into manufacturing, I know it's something else, but you can get to something that feels, appropriate for the brand. And so maybe designers now and brands in a very competitive world are going to have to make a decision and say, is this a volume product and, play by data, play by AI? Or is this something where I need to go against what data could predict and go against precedent and sort of what you said, derivative? I don't know. Is that...
Well, I think let's start by saying Jaguar as a brand is in a crisis, right? Yeah. We all agree that the current lineup of products that while handsome in design are just, I think, a bit dated. Mm-hmm. They were beautiful designs when they were new, but I think they've just sat on the market too long. And there's definitely a demographic shift, a generational shift in the buyer. Mm-hmm. But when I look at a design, basically when I look at any design challenge, I ask myself, first thing is, what am I designing and who am I designing it for? Right. What is the connection between the customer, the brand, and the product? And as I dive deep into the customer, what are their emotions? What are their aspirations? What are their aesthetic tastes? Right. So. Mm-hmm. When I look at the new Jaguar rebranding, so first, I won't get too deep into the advertising, but I found the advertising to be quite dystopian. Actually, I found it to be quite sort of confining and scary. These people kind of moving around like puppets, without control on Mars or something. Right? Yeah. Well, they were moving around as if someone was controlling them. Yeah. Right, like puppets, and they didn't look happy. They had these blank looks like robots, and they contrived, and all of the set design was very confining. They were all in these confined spaces, and it was just very, very dystopian to me. Mm-hmm. I don't associate past, present, or future. I don't associate a Jaguar buyer as anything like those puppets, right? Yeah. Maybe the master of the puppets. Yeah, but not the puppets themselves. Mm-hmm. So to me that they forget about the politics and all that stuff that were surrounded that, but just the fact that these were these controlled people, right? Yeah, I don't see any connection with the Jaguar brand, past, present, or future. Yeah, and then the vehicle design, I didn't see any connection with them. I didn't see any connection with a target buyer. All I saw was this very sort of brutalist, menacing design, which it had a great silhouette, but the surfaces are very brutal, very 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 non sculpted, very very chiseled, right? Mm-hmm. And as a design aesthetic on its own, it's interesting, but is it Jaguar, right? And should Jaguar be beautiful? Should Jaguar be sexy, right? Yeah. And I think the things that make a woman beautiful, right, never change, mm-hmm. right? The proportions, the aesthetics never change. What changes is the fashion. Yeah. Right. And so they. Well, I mean, you'd say that, but at the same time, you look at antiquity. Yeah. And the perception of what a man was in antiquity. You see the sculptures, and Yeah, but and they change over time. Tastes, right? Yeah. So, yeah. But within let's say the span of history that includes Jaguar, yeah. right? What defines beauty hasn't really changed, right. and so being classy, that hasn't changed. Jaguar did have a bit of a rebellious spirit as well. I mean, they were setting records, speed records, and mm-hmm. Winning races and things like that. But Jaguar, the E-Type, the iconic E-Type was described by Enzo Ferrari as the most beautiful car he'd ever seen. Yeah. So Mr. Ferrari is calling the E-Type the most beautiful car he's ever seen. Has the definition of beauty really changed? And is this new car, the Type 00, beautiful?
Yeah.
I don't think it's beautiful.
And does
I think
beauty sell?
Yeah, right.
Also, that's the question, because
Yeah.
if I look at like a lot of products and fashion and digital culture and gaming, the definition of beauty itself is...
I think beauty always sells. I mean, look at the Porsche 911.
Yeah.
Eternally a beautiful car.
Yeah.
It's one of the only cars in the market that is going up and up and up and up and up in value. You know, especially as you get into the older ones.
Yeah.
So there's something about that design that, if I were to say there's one best car design of all time, it's the 911.
Yeah.
And it's the only car that I recently bought a 71 911, and it's the same car I owned 25 years ago, and I bought it back.
Oh, wow.
It's the only car I've ever bought back.
Wow.
It's the only car that I regretted selling, and for decades missed having that car and driving it, and you know, finally went after it again, got it back, and you know, the opportunity came up, and it was just like, you know, wow, you know,
to get it. But at the same time, like, so going back a bit to AI and generating designs, you can imagine Porsche, does it need as many designers, or really it's so the design is so evolutionary that you could imagine much more of it being fed to an AI, whereas the argument with Jag is that maybe they broke a grain, and so they gave themselves a white space, whether it's a universal beauty, whether it's like it has an audience, it's something else, but from a design statement standpoint,
it's a design
hard
statement.
You couldn't feed it to Sora and say, do me this, right? Whereas the Porsche, you can say, paint me the Porsche for 2030, it'll probably do a pretty good job.
Yeah, it will be very evolutionary, but there's so much in the AI world with Porsche. So there's definitely a lot going on there, but a lot of it I see is still very derivative.
For sure.
Yeah, there's something. It has to be crafted very carefully. You know, when you're dealing with beauty, you know, you have to craft it very carefully. When you're dealing with
a 996 C2, which I loved, by the way, and it had the what they call the melting
the scrambled eggs.
I loved the shape of it. I thought it felt like a leap, and it was also water cooled, which was a big drama. But the past few generations are very, very evolutionary. They're hard to tell apart. You know, you've spent an extra $50,000, and it's not clear where the money's gone unless you know you're an enthusiast.
Although you put I have a picture of this, my car against a 992, a silver 992 against my silver 71 911, and the size difference, the 992 is literally twice as big.
As a designer, would it be satisfying to work at Porsche, or do you think you'd get frustrated?
You know, I think it could be very, very interesting.
Moving just needles by a couple millimeters.
But, anyway.
So do you think that with your school now, you're training both the industry, and you're also, particularly during the pandemic, right? There was a necessity at that point.
So I started Car Design Academy during the pandemic, after years of teaching part-time at College for Creative Studies, Cleveland Institute of Art, Art Center College of Design, with the intention of basically supplanting the traditional design education for an aspiring designer. But over the course of the pandemic, and as we were beginning to utilize tools like Gravity Sketch as an online classroom, basically, we were able to take this immersive VR space and recreate a physical classroom environment. We began to get more and more professional designers seeking to learn Gravity Sketch as a tool, and so our target audience has sort of evolved from aspiring designers, who we still work with. I mean, we even work with some K through 12. We work with a K through 12 school in Florida, and we work with students at the university level. But we started training more and more of these professionals because they have this sense of urgency to sort of stay ahead in their careers. And with the emergence of AI, we finally decided now's the time to start introducing a design curriculum for AI, for professional designers who are seeing this sort of transformative moment in their career, where they may feel like they're going to be obsolete, or they're going to be left behind, right? And here, we have a framework which offers them the opportunity to master these tools and to actually deliver on a vision versus just letting the AI sort of take the design with them. Right?
So how do they feel,
Yeah.
before and after the course? Is there a renewed sense of empowerment?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of the course is empowerment. The whole point of the course is to take that sense of urgency that you feel with seeing this emerging technology that's doing something that you've trained a lifetime to do, and it's doing in seconds. And it's also leveling the playing field in terms of visual communication capabilities. And it's providing a framework in order to empower designers and even some non-designers to be able to communicate visually in a new way, which is at a much deeper level, and to have mastery over the outcome of the design.
So
Yeah.
What's interesting is that now, up until this point, it was tools of expression, right? So from sketch to digital, digital to 3D, 3D to VR and AR during the pandemic, where you're sculpting the shape, and now AI, is it sort of a continuation and sort of all about empowerment for the designer? Is it, or has the role of the designer changed? Are you training them to look at the role of a designer differently?
Absolutely. In fact, what we're finding with the framework that we've developed is that we're beginning to attract people from all different industries. So it started as a car design AI for car designers, and we got a team from a travel gear company in Switzerland. We had another team come in from a medical device company in South Africa, and we even had some people coming in with marketing backgrounds, people without any traditional art training or design training, and they were all each of them were able to utilize the framework and deliver results that were not only compelling but appropriate to their needs, their objectives. And
so how has the role changed now? So it used to be, I have an idea and I will sketch it or 3D model it and then sell it in. How has that changed? And
well, so a lot in the traditional methods, the ability to sketch was such a filter, right? A lot of people have ideas but are unable to communicate visually because they don't draw, right? All of a sudden now here's a technology that enables anyone to communicate visually regardless of their drawing ability, right? And so it's removed the filter, and I think it's gonna bring in a new wave of creative people without traditional art training or design training, but with excellent vision and excellent ideas. And they're going to be able to participate in the creative process in a totally new way, and perhaps working with designers, because you're still going to need to have designers with the ability to get to 3D, to get to the physical thing, the end product. You're still going to have people with a high degree of skill in sculpting and CAD and engineering and even the financial and the marketing side of things, in order to get that product to reality. You're still going to have those experts, right? So it's not like anybody can just walk in off the street and begin creating things. Right? So
something you said earlier, I think really resonated for me. It's this notion that if skill and the ability to project it into images is reduced, what's going to become more important is your ability to have taste. And to show something that has taste, and to bring the emotion, perhaps, and show how it connects.
You have to have vision. You have to know what you want or what your objective is. You have to have great taste, and the key skill there is the ability to curate, right? The ability to look at hundreds of images and be able to pick the right one, or pick the right series of images, or to guide the AI into through prompting, right, to guide the AI into producing the images that reflect your intention, right? So rather than just letting the AI run away with whatever it produces. Right.
So do you think it's going to make every new designer that steps out move from just being a designer to jumping straight into a sort of a design manager or a Maury Callum? Does it mean that?
Well, it does mean we all become design leaders. We all become creative creative leaders, right? Because we all have now this little army of junior designers working for us,
Yeah.
the AI, right? And when I talk to designers, it's not an A to B process like you do this and you get that. It's a conversation. AI is a conversation where it's the same as if I were to speak to a junior designer or a graduate, right? This is what I want, and then they'll give me something, and it's not necessarily exactly what I want, but it's their interpretation of what I told them. Right. And so they'll give me something, and it may or may not be what I expect. And then if it's not what I expect, I'll give them a new prompt or a new instruction, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll go and do something and bring it back, and it's this sort of dialogue back and forth that gets us to where we want to be, right? And in the process, I'm also listening and observing their thoughts and their ideas, and I'm not just dictating to them, right? But I'm utilizing their creative energy, their thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. And so AI is a similar process of conversation. So we have to, the only difference is the AI doesn't have emotions, so you don't have to worry about bruising anyone's ego or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, in a sense, we all become creative leaders, right? Yeah, and. Some are going to do better than others. Yeah.
So just closing back on Car Design Academy. So does that mean that hand in hand with the tool set there's also a philosophy that comes with it?
Yes. It's what we call design doing. It's a sort of play on the design thinking concept that was first started by IDEO. Back in the 80s and 90s, mm-hmm. And it's this idea of you follow the framework, and it's a system of innovation, right? That's what design thinking is, and I've been involved in design thinking exercises where you get this multidisciplinary group of people together. You generate a bunch of great ideas. You got Post-it notes all over the wall, and then everybody walks away and like, now what do we do? Right.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
how do we get to the thing? Right.
Design thinking had this double diamond, right? So you would diverge and create a lot of Post-it notes with a lot of possible, some wacky, some less, right? Solutions.
And then you converge.
By filtering through the user, the manufacturing challenges.
So you get to the one idea, but now what do you do, right? And so what design doing does is it offers you a path forward to get to, and it also empowers the innovation team or the multidisciplinary team to be a part of that process all the way through, right? So, I see a day where a creative team is not going to be just a bunch of artists and designers, but a multidisciplinary team of people with diverse backgrounds and points of view working together, right?
I mean, in some cases, design thinking as a model.
Yeah,
it's been completely chopped up because the diverge is potentially gone, right? You can just feed an algorithm; it'll give you 1,000 different solutions.
Yeah.
The converge, arguably, also you can use big data to then validate it without having to build anything. So it's really now it's about the taste. It's who's going to make the gamble, convincing people to do it, and then connecting with the people who are ultimately going to buy it or enjoy the product, right? In a very deep way, because the AI can't do that easily.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about your new venture, Launch Studio.
So when we started the AI Mastery course for Car Design Academy, it was really aimed at car designers. And what we found was that we were getting a lot of interest from people outside of automotive design, from all different design backgrounds, all different industries. We had a team from a Swiss travel gear company come and take the course. We had a team from South Africa doing medical devices, and we had a couple of people with a marketing background that took the course. And what was amazing was how each of them came away with the ability to use our framework and adapt it to their needs and their specific objectives. And so we and then the marketing people that we worked with having no design training or no traditional art training or drawing skill, they were able to take our framework and generate results that were as visually appealing and as visionary as any of the trained designers that were in the group. And so we thought, okay, why are we limiting this to car design? Let's create a new platform that opens up this design framework to everyone in the creative space. And so that's really what Launch Studio is about. We call it design doing as opposed to design thinking because it really empowers people to not only generate a vision or develop a vision, but to execute on it, to deliver it, right? So, and to communicate it visually and through other means in order to get closer to the real thing, the real product, right? And so
much of design thinking now, anyway, the process is probably obsolete. The Diverge is probably not going to be the same anymore if you can have an algorithm generate plenty of solutions, and then Converge also. But what the new process does effectively is help people, empower them through the steps to make the right choices more successfly.
Absolutely,
the big take?
Yeah. AI is a conversation, right? You have to you tell it something and it gives you something back, and it may or may not be what you expect. So you continue the conversation. You tell it something else, gives you something back, and it's just a sort of back and forth exchange that gets you closer to where you want to be, but you've got to know where you want to be, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, you got to be open to what it gives you, and at least consider, right, the possibilities. And so it's sort of like working with a junior designer,
right?
Where they give you something back, and it may not be what you expect, but there might also be some hidden gems,
right,
in what they're giving you because it's unfiltered, unconstrained.
Yeah. It's kind of what you were saying. It's going to make out of all of us design managers.
Exactly.
And so you need a different type of training. It's not just a tool set. It's also effectively,
absolutely
a leap forward in your career. Okay, so thank you very much. So just before we close, some rapid fire quick questions. In a few words, what does a designer or a creative look like in 2030? What is a creative in 2030?
Creative 2030 they have vision, they know what they want, they've got great taste, and they have mastery of the available tools and technology.
And then also in a few words, what would you say is going to be the world of creativity and design in 2030? Is it going to lead to more vanilla, more homogeneous looking designs, or on the contrary, is it going to accelerate and offer new paths that are maybe less explored and new interesting designs?
I think you're going to see a lot of both. You're going to see a lot of people using it poorly and using and sort of letting the AI do the work and ending up at these very homogenized, very derivative solutions. And then you're going to see a few people who learn to master the tools and step out in new ways and create things that are just unbelievable.
Right.
So I'm already seeing the distinction, the separation between those people, and there's some influence